old for video games?
You have failed.
The same way, I will destroy you. And my friend is truly dead.
Now this is pod racing.
Graying Jedi Council, welcome back to the Graying Jedi. I am UrzaMaster. Joining me as always, Lord Uther and Jedi Master Psyllium Maas. Welcome, gentlemen, to the Council chambers. General Kenobi. So we are back, and we are talking episode 11 of Andor, Daughter of Ferrix. And yes, we are back on Ferrix. We are moving right along in this Cassian Andor story. This is an interesting episode. A lot of things happen, a lot of movement. I don't want to cut too far into Jedi Master Psyllium Maas's forte, but I have to say this is one of those episodes that feels like it's setting up something big. So without further ado, to get some background and a little bit more info on the goings-on of this episode, I turn it over to Jedi Master Psyllium Maas.
Thank you, Jedi Master, UrzaMaster. Thank you, Jedi Master, Lord Uther. And thanks to all of our Graying Jedi fans who keep tuning in week after week to hear us expound and expel on the virtues of the Star Wars saga. And here we are going to be doing the latest episode of Andor. But first, a little house cleaning. If you'll just bear with me for a moment here. One of our Graying Jedi is in fact more gray. And we'd like to celebrate that. So, without further ado.
Yes, I'm 15. Oh, thank you.
Our very own Lord Uther. A brief serenade in basic. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Lord Uther. Happy birthday to you. And in lieu of a cake, which I did not have, we have a Carillion croissant for your entertainment. I'm going to make a wish for you that you get a razor for Christmas and blow out your candles. And there you go. And I just
let me tell you real quick.
Computer.
The scariest thing about turning 15 is that I'm going to have to take driver's ed all over again with Jedi Master Psyllium Maas.
Oh dear.
And this is a guy who got a D- in driver's ed, parked on someone's lawn. Our driver's ed teacher had to change channels so Jedi Master Psyllium Maas could actually understand the instructions of how to drive. So any thought of turning 15 is probably scarier than turning 51, because I would have to do that driver's ed all over again.
Indeed. And yes, I got much better with my Starship training once I went back to the academy. So very good. We're happy to see you alive and well, and we look forward to an entire year of your
Where else would I be?
I have got wax now, a waxy buildup, not just in my ears, but all over my computer screen. So indulge me for just, I scraped some of that off so I can actually see our audience doing that. Anyways, as I'm performing emergency surgery on my view screen, let's talk about episode 11 of 12, the penultimate episode of Andor, Daughter of Ferrix. First aired on November 16th, 2022. And it's kind of a 2-episode arc, if you will. Again, it got a little screwy when former showrunner Stephen Skiff was replaced by Tony Gilroy, and he ended up only contributing a single episode. That was Announcement, and that was back in episode 7, which we covered here on the Graying Jedi, and you can certainly hit subscribe and check out the archives, the Jedi archives, for our previous expoundings on the show. And that was Benjamin Caron who directed Announcement, and he's back. But so he got to do 3 episodes, but he did episode 7 And then we had the Narkina 5 arc, and now he's back to do the final 2. And Tony Gilroy, showrunner, and the man who saved Rogue One and stepped in and gave the creative vision for this show. He wrote the first 3 episodes of this season. He's back to do the last 2. Benjamin Caron is a British director. We mentioned him with announcement. He's worked with Kenneth Branagh on the BBC series Wallander. That was a Branagh private eye show that did very well for PBS. And he also directed a stage-to-screen adaptation of A Winter's Tale with Ken. He's worked on Sherlock. He's worked on Netflix's The Crown. And he also directed a nasty little picture. I think you can find it on Apple Plus streaming, called Sharper. He had Sebastian Stan, Julianne Moore, and John Lithgow in a puzzle box of a mystery involving deception, double crosses, people saying they're one thing and turning out to be something else. It's good if you like those. It's sort of a throwback to some, puzzle box 80s and 90s thrillers. So it's sort of an old-fashioned mystery with a twist. So Sharper is Benjamin Caron. And Tony Gilroy, we've lauded his praises all along, so everybody knows where he's coming from. And as a penultimate episode, this one kind of, again, is really moving chess pieces around, with the exception of one character who gets to drive the narrative forward, and we'll discuss that in a little bit. But for the most part, it's really about geography. We've got to get Andor and his fellow escapee Melshi off Narkina 5. And the episode begins with them stumbling across a couple of fishermen, alien intergalactic fishermen, who are upset that the Empire has polluted the waters and made their jobs that much more difficult, if not impossible, to perform. Andor and Melshi think they can get one over on the fishermen, and it turns out the fishermen snap them up in their nets, and they could do whatever they want with them. They could turn them back into the Empire. They could eat them. But in kind of a weird Peter Jackson-y echo, it kind of reminded me of like listening to orcs or trolls from The Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. They end up deciding amongst themselves that the Empire's worse off than these two barefoot and desperate men. And so they end up assisting them and getting them off the planet. And that led me to wonder, it's kind of funny, Andor in the episode Nobody's Listening, which was about 2 graying Jedis ago, he said, look, we're cheaper than droids and easier to replace. And it kind of makes you wonder, even after basically the entire prison nodule escaped last week, one way out, and dove into the sea and spread out, and presumably some were recaptured, some drowned, some made it off the world, some hid on the world, however that it shook out. You got the sense that the Empire wasn't throwing up this like planetary blockade or huge dragnet, because the shrugging is, someone else will be busted for the equivalent of jaywalking and get sentenced to 6 years or 8 or whatever. So it's kind of interesting. They are fugitives. They are on the run. But, I mean, again, all of the ISB agents have been scouring the galaxy for Cassian Andor. They've had him in custody now for, a couple of months at least, number of shifts that he worked there. And they didn't even know, because he was under an alias and nobody bothered to run the prints or. So you get the sense that this is some of the undoing of the Empire. They're so arrogant enough to believe they're in charge and at the top of the food chain that this is how you can slip through the cracks. And all these two have to do is get off the world, and basically they can disappear anywhere into the galaxy if they wanted to. Again, it's not as if the Empire's put out an all points on. They'll just, like I say, the 100 men they lost who escaped, they'll end up just getting 200 more by the next close of business. So I thought that was there. The first thing I think we should talk about, gentlemen, on the council, was the choice, and I don't want to prejudge it and say it was a good choice or a bad choice by Tony Gilroy, but to take a important character, a supporting character, granted, but someone who is responsible for some of Andor's development, most of his development from a young orphan to what he is today, and having them perish off camera. And instead of giving Marva, you know, the classic on her deathbed scene and so forth with emotion, I thought it was fascinating that we processed basically all of that loss through the eyes of B2EMO. And that got me into a thinking about droids, and I mean, C-3PO and BB-8 and R2 and the ones running Jabba's palace. Like, do droids have emotions? Are they just simulations of emotions because it's programming and circuits? Is B2EMO, like, it's heartbreaking. Like when he says, I don't want to be alone, I want Marva. But I mean, I guess I throw this out to you guys. What did you think about how that was handled? You know, instead of doing what we might traditionally think of as, you know, she gets to die and we get to say goodbye to her and so forth, but basically having it happen already, and we have to sort of react to it in real time. And again, most of that grieving comes from this bucket of bolts. And is that, are droids capable of that? I mean, is it just a completely different algorithm in a galaxy far, far away? You know, I don't expect that IBM's Watson would be upset if you beat it in a game of chess. I hope not. But let's talk droids, emotions, and the death of the daughter of Ferrix, Marva.
I liked it. I liked the choice, honestly, because the story's about Andor, and this deepens his emotional reaction to everything that's going on. Because he's, a lot of the times, sort of the supporting role in these story arcs. He's just sort of there and not really driving things. He's kind of getting pulled along. And I feel like where this is headed is this is actually going to foist him into that leading spot. You know, making him assume the mantle of Marva, or who they all kind of want him to be. And even in the prison break, he's sort of outright refused to become. And so I think it's a logical choice to have something like that just occur off screen, and just, it's also very realistic. There are a lot of times that the heroes, you know, sort of quietly die off screen. I wish they would have done that with Leia. A lot. And seeing the droid experience this emotion, it is, that was probably the thing I liked about this episode the most, was it really grabs you by the heartstrings. This is always a sympathetic droid. Like, we always felt kind of bad. And you always kind of feel a little bad about the droids in Star Wars. Like, this is not a new thing, but this is definitely hitting you on a new level where, you know, you're sort of just annoyed with C-3PO. He's kind of dramatic. He's always complaining. He's always whining. He's always kind of right. And it's sort of irritating. And R2-D2 is sort of brave and knowledgeable and sagely, almost like a Yoda of droids. I've always thought of the droids in Star Wars like a foil to the Jedi. You know, they have the capacity for good and evil. They oftentimes appear to be somewhat force sensitive, again, lending itself to the Force as something that penetrates and binds all of us, I think, honestly, regardless of corporeal, you know, flesh or corporeal, you know, metal and circuitry. I think I look at like a General Grievous who's mostly machine and then like tiny bits human. There is a real branch there between, you know, man and machine. Darth Vader was kind of the start of that. He's more machine than man now. That really, it seems like such a radical transformation, but it's really not, because the machines like R2-D2 and C-3PO very early on in A New Hope, and throughout every iteration of Star Wars, especially, between Marva and now I feel bad. I forgot the droid's name.
B2 EMO, yeah.
B2 Emo. It's an emotional unit. Like, it's kind of a little bit of hitting you in the face with, the function of this character. But at the same time, like, it is something that's not without representation in other iterations of Star Wars. Like, there is a really cool thing they're doing with making these droids sympathetic. I mean, even in... Just threw up a little bit in my mouth. Even in Episode 1, the battle droids, you feel a little bad for them sometimes because they're just sort of stupid. They're just cannon fodder. And that's, I mean, realistically, that's their function. That's their lot in life. But they get scared. They're aware sort of their own mortality. It's a nice take on AI and android life that I think is one of the few things Star Wars really does nicely. Star Trek has Data, but a lot of the machine beings in Star Trek or droid beings in Star Trek are logical. If they are malicious, they're malicious due to programming. If they are, righteous, they're righteous due to programming, often to a fault in either direction. And it's a binary existence for them. There are shades of gray to the droids in Star Wars, and that makes them very interesting characters where you might not have a humanoid or an alien character you can put in that role that's going to function in the same way. And I think, like Lucas wanted to make C-3PO and R2-D2 sort of the comedic foil of the original trilogy. They're, stand-ins for the audience in a way. I like it. I mean, frankly, I've always been a sucker for the droids. I've always seen their purpose and function. It's kind of like, as divisive as it can be, it's kind of like Jar Jar Binks in a way. There was a very strong purpose for it, and I think once you sort of understand the purpose of that character, it does make a little bit better sense, even if the character itself is pretty grating. And I think B2 EMO here does kind of come across as pathetic at first, but pathetic in a way that you just feel bad. And then you just continue to feel bad. And now you just feel terrible for this little guy, like a puppy that sits at the grave of its master until it, dies of starvation or something. Like, it's the Greyfriars Bobby of Star Wars. So that's really all I have to say. I really enjoy the choice. I think it's effective, and it really drew me into this episode.
Well, so the emotion that we would have gotten with Marvel, that was the purpose of B2 EMO, and that scene was to give, that's the emotion, right? You feel it through the droid. And then he's this aging droid, kind of like Marva. He doesn't fully charge all the time. He runs out of juice really quick. He stutters. He kind of clunks around, right? I mean, he's all those pieces. And UrzaMaster, to your credit, as always, you had brought this up before, the idea of Star Wars just really doing the idea of droids differently. They're all unique. BB-8 was, except for BB-8, to me that was an R2-D2 complete replica in a sense. We'll get there, everyone. Don't worry about it. We'll get to that and pod racing. You get all that when you click subscribe for the Graying Jedi impending rebrand, which we just got a few more subs as I was checking. So yeah, let's go. So again, just the idea of, and I think the emotional punch for the audience too of Marva going and us not seeing it, right? So I think there are certain points in times when a character dying off screen adds even more than you actually seeing it or experiencing it. To your point, that's what should have happened with Leia as well. But we get that, right? We feel for we feel it's like we're experiencing the emotion with B2 EMO. That was purpose. And yes, I was going to say the whole emo thing obviously stands for emotion. That's what you're supposed to get with this droid. And just to kind of fast forward, towards the end of the episode, when Cassian, to see the look on his face hearing that Marva died, he didn't see it either. So it's kind of what we experience. I think that was a part of it too, right? Cassian is going through what we've gone through. We didn't see it happen, but we felt the emotion. We know how much he loved her, how much she loved him. You put all that together, and you just get, to me, a great choice of having her perish off screen. I think that was the right move without a doubt.
Good call. Love that. All right. How about what I hope will be, we may never get it in season 2. When we finally wrap up this adventure of Andor, we'll discuss how they're changing the lineup for season 2 in such a way that's even more daring than the first season. So there's a chance we won't get to see too much more interaction, but boy, there is a great spin-off backstory here between Clea and Val. When Val goes shopping, and Clea is one of those characters, again, Luthen's, assistant in the store, which they, use to keep up their fronts for their real activities. She and Val have already sort of jousted once on a meet in the dim underbelly of Coruscant. Not quite as dim as where Luthen likes to meet, but in a secluded environment where no one could spy them or spy on them. But here they are in the shop, and Clea is trying to maintain the facade, the cover, and Val's having none of it. And again, your opinion of Val from Aldhani, and then we discover that she's Mon Mothma's blood relatives, and that she's a spoiled rich girl who's basically come over to the rebellion, and the scales have fallen from her eyes, and she's carrying on an affair with Cinta, who, by the way, talk about being committed to the cause. Cinta's not only doing a stakeout on Marva on Ferrix, she took a job. Like, she's not just sitting looking through a hotel room, snacking on things and all of that. I mean, she's being productive, right? She's become a barista or a barkeep. And I mean that.
And at the best place possible to gather information.
Right, exactly.
I mean,
the
that's
local
the
watering
purpose.
hole.
That's the right spot.
The local, the local speakeasy. But I love that detail. That again, it would have been very easy to show a shot of her with like a hood over her head, like standing in the shadows watching the door. But here it is. She's just like, I just started last week, and I don't know who died. Somebody died, So I just thought that was fun. But Val and Clea, I loved. I mean, I could have watched another 40 minutes of those two, slinging verbal daggers at each other. Val's quote, "I gave him Altani. What have you done lately?" And Clea, without missing a beat, says, "I don't have lately. I have always." And you can tell which one is the more experienced spy and which one is more likely to stab you in the shoulder blades when you're not looking. And that's why I say, what an interesting choice. Even this small minor character who, let's be honest, Clea has not been given her own storylines or her own agency as far as this, because we've had so many other great paths in which to explore. But easily she could be, she's clearly as ruthless as Luthen, if not more. Luthen's will was faltering a couple of episodes ago, and she says, I need you to be smart. I need you to, we need to shut down the radio communication to Ferrix, or they're going to find us. And, and you're slipping. She can say that to him, and he's not, he's not insecure enough to accept that she's right. So, Clea, as a rebellion, as a rebel, some very interesting stuff there. So I love that beat between those two. And maybe we'll get more of that in the second season. But like I say, the structure of season 2 is going to be very, very odd. The Gong Man.
I sure hope so, because Val and Clea strike me as ex-lovers.
Nice.
They are two dominant personalities, which is clearly a bad mix for a relationship. But the tumult of that, you could easily tell a backstory about how this little rich girl happened upon this rebel who was probably very early in the seeds of the Rebel Alliance, and this rebel might even be another rich girl. but was working towards this, rebel goal, and the girl fell for the rebel girl, and they both became rebels, but they're both dominant personalities.
And that would explain
they've been in competition this whole
right.
time.
That would explain how Val came into contact with Luthen. I'm saying, yeah, I kind of like where you're going with this, Jedi Master, UrzaMaster.
And somewhere along the line, she runs into, what's her name?
Cinta.
Siesta?
Cinta.
Cinta. Maybe I'm just tired. I want a siesta. But Cinta is definitely the more demure, submissive, but still really good at what she does. Much better match for Val. There's clearly real feelings there, kind of thing, and that probably rubs, this whole relationship the wrong way. And yeah, Val has done something good now, but the entire time, the more experienced, the more dedicated to the cause spy, not just spoiled rich brat, has been guiding Luthen, who's really kind of the brawn, and this is really the brains of this segment of the Rebel Alliance. I think that's a fantastic story to tell, and I really hope we see more of it. But I wonder if we get a glimpse, a breath of a different type of relationship. Is that something that Disney's willing to delve into? I sure hope so, because I think it'd be compelling. And it doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like they're doing this for any kind of gratuitous reason or to appeal to the whatever the expression of the expression du jour is, the woke movement or whatever they're saying these days. They're not appealing to that. This is a very natural, very chemistry-based method of storytelling that plays right into how this could play out if this was a real thing. It feels very real, very normal, which I think is the best part about it.
You can see when certain writers, especially, were getting an opportunity for Tony Gilroy to come back because he had done the first three and now has come back. You can see what he likes. Like, he puts the Gong Man back in. No other writer or director had the Ferrix Gong Man, and yet here he is in a brief cameo banging on the drums. He doesn't want to work. He just wants to bang on the drums all day. And he's got scenes with B2EMO, which, again, some of the other directors didn't, focus on, the other writers. So it's interesting. You can sort of see, like, where guys, I like that. I want to keep doing that. We did get a broken Bix briefly. Dr. Gorst's treatment, I would not recommend for anyone if that's how you're going to end up. I don't know if we're ever going to see the old Bix Colleen. What I loved was the ISB barking up the wrong tree and thinking that Anton Krieger was Axis. Like they think that he could be Luthen, and that's of course clearly wrong. But then again, if she tells them that's not them, are they really going to believe her? They'll just go back to torturing her again. So it's kind of a no-win for poor Bix there. Val, we're not done with Val yet because she goes to see her cousin. And although the conversation between Mon Mothma and Val kind of just sort of reiterates where we've always been, we can see that Mon has made, or is leaning pretty close to making her decision as to whether or not she's going to go into business with Davo on his terms. And they contrast that with her daughter, Leda. And again, a very minor character, doesn't have her own storylines per se. She's just part of the thread of Mon's story. But it looks like she's involved in some Chandrillian Bible study or, history, coffee clatch, if you will. And apparently this is something that the young women of that culture and that planet and that society, that's part of the rites of passage. Mon Mothma suggests that she did it, with her husband and so forth. And what it really made me think of, it wasn't so much about the here and now with Val and Mon, because like I say, she's kind of like considering the unthinkable. But this idea that when you look at her family relationship, her husband is completely content with going to the Imperial cocktail parties and cozying up to Palpatine's draconian security measures, and like he's living the life, and he doesn't see the status quo needs to change in the slightest. If anything, he wants to improve his standing, and even more. The idea that there's actually rebels on the front lines causing havoc and mischief out in the Outer Rim couldn't be further from his mind. And there's that distance, that gulf between him and Mon Mothma, because she obviously is very passionate about the cause and wanting to prevent the boot of fascism from crushing the galaxy's neck. And you see the daughter, and again, I think Tekolva tells her it's a difficult age. Even with that, there's a scene where she hugs her aunt, Val, and she looks over at Mon Mothma, and it's a very quick scene, but there's like a look of disgust on her face. Like she's like, oh my God, Mom? Like, really? And that would hurt, I would think, as a parent, to be able to, even if you're, I mean, again, we all know that teenagers can be a pain in the blaster, but to have a family that damaged, when seemingly, I mean, again, they're not like throwing furniture at each other or screaming or pulling hair, but just that level of disdain and coldness. And I mean, like I say, it really deepens Mon's character, and I don't know if that landed with you guys as parents. I mean, maybe not of teenage girls, but it's a very sad but very telling. And I love that Benjamin Caron, the director, caught it and didn't draw a big deal of it. She doesn't have Leda stomp her foot and said, "You never let me do anything, Dad. I'll go talk to Dad." It's all communicated non-verbally. But boy, it tells a story. A grimace is worth 1,000 words.
It makes me want more from them too. Like I want to know where this falling out was, because yeah, teenagers are notorious. I mean, there's the stereotypes for a reason, but usually not to that degree. Like at some point, there's still a vulnerability. There's still a, I hate you, but I need you kind of thing, and you're getting a lot of the I hate you right now. You're not getting the I need you. Like I can't go and be an adult because I'm not ready, which I'm thinking maybe with this whole like betrothal thing that's coming along, like maybe that's where it hits. Again, having not seen the full series, that could be coming down the pipe. That being said, maybe not. She's very into this, sort of old ways kind of thing. Maybe it's longing to be on her home planet. And it makes me think of like a colonialist viewpoint. You have this extremely privileged class that leaves the home world or the home country for this distant place, and they bring with them sort of puritanical ways. A portion of them don't carry that forth and sort of modernize and globalize, if you will, and then a portion of them become sort of very, very deep into the sort of conservative value of their own home culture. And sometimes you get a relationship born of this, where you have maybe one that's not so hardcore but leans, one direction, and the other that leans the other direction or goes even further the other direction to outright rebellion, if you will. And
See what you did there.
You sort of get the Michael J. Fox in this case. You get the kid that, both parents really aren't into the old ways and aren't really this conservative image. One is kind of the, maybe you could say a conservative playboy. The other is kind of the left-leaning, antithesis of that, and is trying to be this righteous, sort of, I don't know, globalized moral standing character. And then you get the, well, I'm going to be more like this person because it lets me do whatever I want. That's a very childish way to grow. And because of that, I'm going to aspire to be everything like that and take it to the nth degree, because that's a teenage thing. It's very adolescent, not being able to have that critical thinking bit until you get confronted with something that makes you incredibly uncomfortable. Some people never get there because they're in constant arrested development. Is that going to happen with Mon Mothma's daughter? Maybe. Maybe she just goes along with the flow and follows the traditions, and that's her thing. Or, potentially, she hits that wall, and she's like, I don't want to do this, I need you. Like, please save me. And that could be the heartbreaking moment for Mon Mothma, that, as if this isn't heartbreaking enough, by the way, because when she was crying on the couch, I darn near lost it myself, because I could feel that pain. I could feel that pain because she knows she has to do something she just so vehemently is disgusted by, just does not want for her daughter, despite everything her daughter's putting against her. I mean, that it was so poignant. That one little look where like she's hurting so much and her daughter has no idea the love and caring behind that pain that she's masking and that she's just allowing to take place because it has to happen for the greater good. We get that message pretty bluntly in this episode, right? For the greater good, it's war. And this is war of a different variety.
Yes. I mean, she's still selling her kid up the river. I mean, I know that's what needs to be done. You know, you got to ask yourself if you would do that.
Right.
I mean, would you be willing to do that? There's really no other way around that you're willing to do that. But then again, the daughter kind of seems to be on board with it in a sense, just to kind of get back at mom, which I still say that's how her marriage obviously happened. I mean, that's got to be what, I mean, we don't know that, but to me, that's got to be what had gone down at some point. But yeah, just that look. It's amazing what your kids can do with a look or a word.
Or a word.
You know, I always tell my students, yeah, your words have power. You don't think they do, but what you say and how you carry yourself and the emotion behind it, you're definitely powerful at that age. And what's funny is when you're that age, like I was, 40 years
Many
ago,
years ago, yeah.
you don't think you do, which is why you do some of the things that you do. And until you're probably told multiple times, you do have power, you just don't understand it, and here's what the power is, kids will do those things. And I see it every day, So, yeah, great scene. Obviously, we'll have to see what happens in the future there, but set it up perfectly with just one look, and then obviously even just hugging, because they're cousins, right? No, or are they sisters?
I think they're cousins.
The Val and
Yeah, they're cousins.
I think they're cousins. Yeah, and just like even the daughter, obviously preferring, Val over the mother. That's as a parent too. That's gut wrenching. So there's a lot of that back and forth. I think there's just that parental dynamic. To add it into a series like this, to have a parental dynamic, I think it's fascinating that they were able to do that.
Just one look. That's all it took. All right. Well, we've jumped around in the episode as Tony Gilroy has. There's a little cameo from Cyril, who discovers from his favorite sergeant, who's been like demoted to like the welding shift. Played mostly for comic relief, but puts Cyril back in the game. Dedra has also been alerted to Marva's death, and I love the detail that comes up in that she's to be cremated and bricked, and then put into the community as like another stone.
I think that's kind of a cool tradition. I'm not
right.
gonna lie.
I mean, you think about it, instead of tombstones and all of that, be a brick. So Dedra's, she's closing in her fist. Cyril now is on the take. Andor's learned, secondhand that his beloved adopted mother is dead. But that brings us to Luthen Rael, action hero, and Luthen and Saw having a very different conversation than they did a couple of episodes ago, when Luthen was trying to actively recruit Saw to go on the mission to Spellhouse with Anton Krieger. And what I'm just going to say about it, and then I really want the council to weigh in. I love that when you watch the first conversation with Luthen and Saw concerning the mission, you can totally see one point of view in terms of Luthen wanting Saw to be more of a team player, less partisan, and you can see Saw's resistance to it, that, hey, I don't trust these people. We fought against them in the Clone Wars. They were on the other side, and now you want me to put my life in their hands. And now we come around full circle to a completely different part of the conversation, and it still holds up. The reasoning, the facts on the ground may have changed, but that doesn't make the arguments any less compelling or logical or so forth. So I'm very excited to hear Jedi Master UrzaMaster and Lord Uther talk us through, because really, if you want a dynamo driving this, a character who's not just merely sort of being, moved into position to deliver a bang-up finale, Luthen Rael is got his foot on the gas, and he's not going to let it go.
Luthen's the ultimate chess player. I would not want to sit down with that guy. Or what was the game called that they played on Millennium Falcon?
Dejeric.
What was the name of that game?
The holographic chess, Dejeric. Yeah.
Yeah. Then he's the ultimate Dejeric master there, because he can just he plays everyone like a fiddle. I like the depth that they're adding to Saw versus what I liked him in Rogue One. I understood his purpose, but I like the depth and the importance that we're getting, because in Rogue One they were saying how important he was, but I wasn't exactly sure why, and we're starting to see some of that, right? Which maybe maybe we need to do a Rogue One podcast once this season is over. I know we're going to get a second season of it, but maybe we can kind of put all that together. Anyway, I'm thinking out loud. Here's my question for both of you, and I don't know if you saw it. Luthen's turning out to be one of my favorite characters in Star Wars. I can't help it. The ship, which is just, oh my gosh, phenomenal. But he's getting frisk, and the guy pulls out a piece, looks about yay long, and he's like, what'd he say? Either take it or give it back.
He's like, either put it down or give it back. Yeah, that was the...
Right. From under his robe, here's my question. Not is he, do you want him to be a Jedi or a Sith? I throw that back to the two of you, because was that a lightsaber hilt that was pulled out? One that we've never really seen before? What do you want? Do you want him to be that?
That's an interesting question, and I think it ties into the ship, right? He has lightsabers coming out of the ship.
Yes.
He's got a Kyber crystal. The lightsabers are red coming out of the ship, by the way.
Yep.
He has to use the tactics and tools of his enemies. So, in a sense, I don't know that I want him to be a Sith. I don't think I want him to be a Jedi either. I would like him to be sort of the granddaddy of the graying Jedi, the gray Jedi. The Ahsokas of the world. Maybe he was a Padawan that left the Jedi Temple long ago for whatever reason. Decided, I don't want to do this, I want to go be a merchant, but still had some Force sensitivity, maybe not a lot, maybe like a Sabine Wren level, and over the years has honed and developed, and it's benefited him to be this master chess player. This is a character that could easily become one of the most interesting in the universe, like more so than even maybe not an Obi-Wan Kenobi, but certainly an Anakin Skywalker. Although I think the way they're building Anakin in Ahsoka is very interesting and could be really compelling going forward too. But this is a character that I think sort of snuck up on him. I don't know, not knowing the rest of the series, if he meets any kind of fate or if he's still kicking after the season finale. But if he is, this is an opportunity they shouldn't squander, because Stellan Skarsgård is young enough that he could play this character for a good long while, and you could tell a lot of really interesting stories about a gray Jedi that nobody really knew about, because he just wasn't Force sensitive. Like Sabine Wren wasn't Force sensitive enough. Maybe he was identified. His midi-chlorian count was 7, and it's like, well, most people are at a 3. We'll try. Or maybe he was just like one of the janitor's kids at the Jedi Temple or something. Honestly, these are the compelling stories that are out there, where it's just like he wasn't sensitive enough for the Jedi Council to be like, Padawan he must be. But maybe he was just enough where he got cunning. and learned how to build a lightsaber in his free time. Maybe he's got some background knowledge enough to get himself by and to be a force to be reckoned with. Also, how freaking cool was that anti-tractor beam thing he did? I mean, that was like, this is a James Bond level, like not Jedi escape, but Star Wars escape maneuver. I was thrilled. I mean, that was awesome.
And in the same breath, again, here's Saw saying, I'm in. I want all the equipment you promised. Let's do this. You just give me the coordinates. And Luthen's like, nah, I changed my mind. You can't go. Well, what do you mean? Last time you were here, you told me. He goes, yeah. He goes, ISB knows. Well, how do they know? He goes, are you ISB? And he's like, do you have people, in ISB? And he won't tell him. And then he says, do you have people in here? And he goes, yeah, it's Two Eyes over here. And then, and then he pulls a blaster on Saw, which is probably not an easy thing to do, given how paranoid and defensive he is. Like I just say, like Skarsgård and Forrest Whitaker in that sequence just completely, like you're just sitting there like with your breath caught in your throat, right? I would very much, I think when Andor was first conceived as sort of a James Bond, espionage show, I think they had this character in mind, sort of the spy master character. But my God, if anyone deserved a 4 to 6 episode, just him running missions and getting in and out of trouble, I would watch Luthen, like I would watch that show, like sign me up. Like I say.
Frankly, I'd watch him sell relics and antiques in his little Liberace character. It would be amazing.
Something just hit me. What if he was a Sith and he somehow knew about Palpatine, and that's what this is all about? Let's think back to the last episode when he's standing on that platform, whatever, that bridge or that railway, and he's clad head to toe black, like a Sith, right, with the outfit. And now you brought up the great point of the ship having what appears to be red lightsabers on the side that were cutting up the TIE fighters. I mean, maybe he's a Sith that, like you're saying, is winds up going gray at some point, because this is really a vendetta against Palpatine. Because do we really know why he's going against the Empire? Has it really been said yet?
No, I mean, he's made it his life cause, and he talked to Lonnie about, I've started a fire that I will never see burn. I will never see the sunset on. Yeah, I mean, it could it be personal? Absolutely. Like but like I say, whether he's a good guy or a bad guy, I mean, he could be Dedra too. I want to watch him. As I was just saying, he's just, I love the officious arrogance and indifference of the Imperials trying, like, oh yeah, turn the tractor beam on. Well, sir, his codes check out. We don't need to board him. Well, we could use the practice. And I just love how, like, they're just expecting, him to bend the knee and roll over, and instead he just absolutely. You want to talk about looks? The look on that commander's face when he's going to have to explain to his superiors, like, oh yeah, my ship was damaged, and by a pirate or something. Like what? I'm sure he's going to get docked some Imperial.
And I lost 4 TIE fighters.
So.
I'm stuck. I'm sorry. I'm stuck on the Palpatine thing. Think of the guts. I'm just going to... One more thing. Just because. Why not?
It's your birthday. Go ahead.
Is anyone in the galaxy... I mean, who stood up to Palpatine? And, like, that's what he's doing, right? Like, he's brandishly, like, audaciously, he's going to stand... To me, it's like a big middle finger to Palpatine, what he's trying to do. Or the Empire, but who's the Empire really at this point? Is it it's right. Palpatine, right? I mean, I'm stuck. That's my theory, everybody. Click subscribe so you can continue to hear more of my alleged great theories on this. But that's it. I'm stuck on that. This is a vendetta, really deep down, because you never really know Luthen's intentions, right? He's always, because again, he's the master chessboard player, whatever the name of that game is called, and Thank you.
Yes.
God bless you. So it got to be. I think this is all. This is a. It's against Palpatine. That's it. I'm done. All right.
Well, here's an interesting Easter egg to just feed this to Lord Uther's fire.
Yes,
In the
Gary.
scene between Val and
Clea?
I want to say
Clea.
Sierra, but that's not her name. I forget. Clea, thank you. In that scene, in one of the shots, you can clearly see a Gungan shield in the background of the shot. One of the flex shields from Episode 1.
Really?
So it makes me wonder, that's pre-Clone Wars level stuff. It makes me wonder, is Luthen maybe an old Padawan or an old apprentice, Sith or Jedi? Could it be that at that time, during that era, he was old enough to have maybe been around? We don't know where he comes from. Is he from Coruscant? Is he from Naboo? Is he from, some Trade Federation planet? Was he, a disciple of Dooku or maybe Darth Maul? Or, was he maybe, and I'm sticking to, like a Sabine Wren, was he maybe just some, working stiff type character that rose up to prominence as a merchant and, had good affiliation with the Jedi, or maybe with Dooku or somebody else who's Force affiliated, or maybe he's not Force sensitive at all. He's just that cunning, like a Lando Calrissian, and has made deals on both sides, and bought Kyber crystals, or was rewarded with Kyber crystals because he helped get a Jedi killed during Order 66, or who knows. And maybe that was the horror that turned him from his play both sides ways, the U.S. circa, World War II starting out, or World War One, where they're like, we'll just sell weapons on both sides.
Yeah.
And then it's like, we're going to have to make a call here, fellas. Y'all need to put this to bed. And is that the birth of the rebellion for Luthen? Who knows? I think there's, like I said, this is the interesting stuff about Star Wars that you can tell. You don't need to keep bringing up the Skywalkers. You don't need to keep even banging the drums of the Jedi, although I think there's plenty of great Jedi stories to tell. It's not so much the supernatural element you need to tell. You have plenty of good sort of average Joe freedom fighter type stories that, frankly, I think resonate better with audiences. They're going to have longer lasting impacts. And that's why I think A New Hope, before being called A New Hope, the Star Wars was appealing because there's a lot of people who could identify with a kid sort of getting wrapped up in something that's bigger than him, and then being rebellious, trying to strike your own path, find your own way, balancing against the death of a mentor, balancing against, finding this unlikely family around you. Like that's an amazing story. Like Joseph Campbell, created that mythos with George Lucas, and it was successful for a reason. That's what Andor's doing. It's a lot more layered. It's a lot more interwoven. But these are all characters that, in these brief encounters we've had with them, if you're counting the minutes, you want more. That's, as maybe mixed as the reviews of this show were, it's totally unfair. I think if you look at this with an unbiased lens, which is hard to do for Star Wars fans. They tend to be quite vicious, and that's understandable. You had Jake Lloyd. I get it. That's enough. You don't need any more reason to be angry for the rest of your life. But you also got Qui-Gon Jinn, arguably one of the most cool Jedi characters, most compelling characters Star Wars ever delivered, and you got him for, screen time like 36 minutes, 35 minutes? That's significant. So that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to get off my UrzaMaster soapbox, but I may not be the Yoda, but Mace Windu give great speeches.
Outstanding. Well, gentlemen, I think it's time to pull out our lightsabers. Ordinarily, if I was going to take an episode that was mainly about setting up, again, we're building towards the season 1 finale, which we will be proud to bring you as part of the Graying Jedi, as part of Pending Rebrand, which again, you want to subscribe to get those updates and make sure you don't miss a moment of all this hijinks and hilarity. Even though the episode was mainly just, again, about setting us up for a Grand Slam finale, I would ordinarily give that episode a blue, much like the Imperial Walker shirt that I'm wearing today, which says actually not today. That would ordinarily be the case, but I think Luthen Rael and Saw Gerrera and his confrontation with the Imperial patrol ship is what, for me, put it back in the green, as you expected, with my somewhat grotesque Grogu cell phone holder. You put the cell phone in here like this as it's charging, and Grogu gives it a hug. So your cell phone is a stand-in for Din Djarin, a.k.a. Mando. So we're going cell phone holder green, thanks to Stellan Skarsgård's mesmerizing and always compelling performance in this particular installment.
Well, and thank you for not taking off any more clothes. So that was just enough.
Well, that was your birthday.
Yes. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to me. I mean, let's be honest.
Happy birthday, Mr. President.
Mr. Uther. All right. Phenomenal episode. Just Luthen's ship and the cool things. Like, I love the Millennium Falcon. I love the Razor Crest. But I think the Fondor now might be right up there with those ships. And I hope this is just the beginning of what that ship can do. That's all I'm going to say. With that, I'm going Christmas Cape green for this episode. Or holiday, whatever y'all want to call it. Around these parts, we call it Christmas.
Yeah.
So Christmas Cape green. Great setup episode. Who knows what's going to happen that next episode? And I can't wait to find out, even though I do know. But yes.
And I mean, I've belabored the point. I love this episode. I got all my favorite characters. I got a couple that I love to hate. I got that emotional stuff that I really enjoy. I got depth. I got some comments on colonialism. I got some amazing, use of my English degree watching this episode. And that alone should warrant a jasmine green tea green.
Good flavor.
And yeah, by the way, fantastic flavor. If you've not had a jasmine green tea, I typically don't like a sweetened tea. This is very, very, very light on any kind of sweet. But man, just it will zen you. It will make you feel wonderful. It'll make you feel like Andor on the beach with all his credits without getting arrested, with his gal for hire back in the room waiting for breakfast.
I hope she got her breakfast eventually, but yes.
I assume she had something, like maybe some crumpets with some spread, wondering where the H Andor went, or maybe she's just like, that guy stiffed me and took off. Very possible. Oh, that's a double entendre. I didn't even think of that.
Literal and figurative.
There you go. There you go. That was accidental. I did not plan that. This is a family-friendly show.
Yes.
My apologies, fans of The Graying Jedi. I look very much forward to the next episode. Again, vehicle episode, but this was, they're really saving the best for last. And ostensibly, they're setting this up for a season 2 that I just cannot wait to see. I know it's going to be a ways. And I hope we can talk Rogue One after we're done with Andor, because I think it's a worthy next step. And then we'll leave it a secret for a galaxy far, far away beyond those episodes as to what we will be diving into. Until then, may the Force be with you. Always.
And also with you.